Well, the Labour MP Diane Abbott was the first black woman elected to Parliament and has campaigned against racism for years. She's also Ngozi Fulani's MP. And in a tweet, the MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington said, "Ridiculous for Buckingham Palace aide to be so rude to my friend and constituent Ngozi Fulani. Next thing they'll be asking me, where do you really come from?" And Diane Abbott joins me now, I'm pleased to say. Diane Abbott, good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. So, as you were saying there, Ngozi Fulani, a friend as well as a constituent of yours. So, what's your reaction to what's happened to her?
Well, at first, when I heard about it, I was completely shocked. This is 2022. I mean, years ago, I've had interactions like Ngozi had many, many times. They'd say, "Where are you from?" I'd say London, and they'd say, "Where are you really from?" Talking to friends this morning, we've all had that experience, but I just think in 2022, people should know better.
Have you been able to talk to her at all about this?
No, I haven't been able to. I've spoken to one of her colleagues at her organisation, but I've not been able to meet with her today.
So maybe that will happen as the days and hours go on. But in the meantime, Buckingham Palace were very keen to stress yesterday, weren't they, that they acted swiftly. They announced quickly that Lady Hussey was stepping down. They also put out some strong statements condemning racism, as did Prince William's people as well. Are you reassured at all by the promptness of the action taken by the Palace?
Well, you have to say, if this had happened a few years ago, people would have shrugged it off. And so that Ngozi was touchy, she had a chip on her shoulder and so on. And the fact that Buckingham Palace has moved swiftly does show a little bit of progress, you have to say that.
Would you like to see more action, though, from the Palace?
Well, I think it's important that they recognise what was wrong with the interaction in the form of words. One thing I would say, though, is this demonstrates that Meghan Markle wasn't totally wrong when she said there were issues about race in the royal family, and she was thoroughly abused by the popular press, but this sort of vindicates what she was saying.
And it's interesting what you said that about this having happened to you, and there has been an extraordinary outpouring of stories on social media, haven't there, about people saying they've had exactly the same challenges from people saying, "No, but where are you really from?" That seems to be a question that has come up an awful lot. Do you think there needs to be a wider conversation, not just a focus on the Palace, but also a wider conversation in this country about this kind of issue?
Well, I think the issue in this particular conversation was the lady just could not believe that you would be black and British. That's why she kept asking the question over and over again. I think with younger people, they are more likely to believe that you're black and British. But I think there does need to be a conversation about language as well as material examples of racism and disadvantage. But there does need to be a conversation about language.
It's interesting that you talk about generations. Do you think that age is an issue here? The woman in question here, the Palace aide, was in her 80s. Do you think that should be taken into account or not?
Well, I don't know about taking it into account. It was an offensive conversation. It really was. But all I'm saying is that younger people are more likely to believe that you can be black and British. After all, the British Prime Minister is of Indian descent. So, you know, we live in a more multiracial society, but however you look at it, what that woman said to Ngozi was wrong and offensive.
And do you think this story in itself will raise some awareness? The fact that it's prompted conversations about people's experiences, your own experiences, people's colleagues' experiences, and maybe family members as well. Do you think that's there are some positives that could come out of this? There's a raising of awareness?
I hope it will raise consciousness and awareness, because language matters, and language can be very hurtful. I know that Ngozi was very hurt by that interaction. I mean, she's come to Buckingham Palace. She's hoping to have a positive time. And then almost the first encounter she has is this woman poking around her hair and insisting, where does she really come from?
And the other thing that the palace said yesterday was they said that all members of the royal household would be, that the wording was reminded of the diversity and inclusivity policies which they're required to uphold at all times. Do you feel that there are enough organisations that put enough emphasis on those kinds of policies?
I think there are a lot of public sector organisations which ought to put more emphasis on those policies. We've seen a report about dreadful things happening in the fire brigade. We know the issues in the police with the things they pass amongst themselves online. I think a lot of organisations need to be reminded that language matters, and you can't dismiss racist language as just banter.
Well, Diane Abbott, we really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us.